Welcome to the deep dive.
Yes.
We always get into these really complex ideas,
Yeah.
and this time we're going to be talking about soulmates.
Okay.
But not the romantic fairy tale kind.
Right.
We're talking about
Yeah.
a raw, almost supernatural bond
Right.
with all of its pitfalls.
Uh-huh.
You sent us a clip from a fictional thriller podcast called The Last Thread.
Okay.
And let me tell you, it takes this whole idea
Uh-huh.
to a new level
Okay.
and kind of an unsettling level.
It definitely throws a wrench into our happily ever after trope
Yeah.
that we associate with soulmates.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about The Last Thread is it throws us right into the deep end
Okay.
with this premise.
Uh-huh.
Soulmates are connected
Yeah.
by an unbreakable bond
Oh, wow.
where they can feel each other's emotions and even thoughts.
Oh.
No filters,
Whoa.
no boundaries.
Okay.
It's like constant access to someone else's mind,
Right.
which, as you can imagine, could get pretty messy.
It makes you question the very nature of individuality and boundaries.
Right.
Where does one person end
Exactly.
and the other begin if you're experiencing the world
Yeah,
through this shared lens?
exactly. And to bring this concept to life,
Okay.
we meet the protagonist who is bound to a soulmate
Uh-huh.
who, well, let's just say, keeps things interesting.
All right.
His name is Nicholas Sparks,
Nicholas Sparks.
a teenage, self-proclaimed detective
Okay.
who seems to have a knack for finding trouble.
The contrast between their personalities is so striking.
Right.
It's like they're on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Uh-huh.
The protagonist seems more cautious and introspective, while Nicholas is impulsive
Yeah.
and driven by this need for thrills.
Right.
This clash sets the stage for some pretty intense conflict
Yeah.
within their connection.
It's almost like watching a car crash in slow motion,
Right.
knowing you can't look away.
Yeah.
There's this one scene where Nicholas skips class.
He skips class.
Yeah, and picks a lock
Oh, wow.
to chase a lead on a missing girl.
Okay.
The protagonist is stuck in class.
Sucky class.
But through their bond,
Yeah.
they experience every single thing Nicholas does.
Oh, wow.
His impulsiveness, his frustration, even the physical sensation of picking the lock.
Okay.
It's both exhilarating
Right.
and terrifying
Yeah.
all at once.
This scene isn't just about plot.
Uh-huh.
It raises a huge question about agency within a soulmate relationship.
Right.
If you are constantly bombarded by your soulmate's emotions and thoughts,
Okay.
how much control do you actually have
Yeah.
over your own life? Are you truly free,
That's a good question.
or are you living in their shadow, forever tethered
Whoa.
to their choices and experiences?
That's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And as you can guess, things take a seriously dark turn.
They do.
Nicholas's reckless nature ultimately leads to a shocking event,
Oh, no.
his sudden and violent death.
Wow.
I mean, talk about a curveball.
And this is where the last thread takes a step beyond.
Okay.
The usual soulmate narrative.
Okay.
The protagonist doesn't just experience Nicholas's death emotionally.
Right.
They experience it viscerally.
Oh, wow.
They feel his pain, the sheer terror,
Oh, God.
even the metallic taste of blood.
Oh, my.
It's a complete sensory overload, as if they're dying alongside him.
Yeah, there's this really powerful image of the protagonist collapsing in class.
Collapsing.
Overwhelmed by the force of Nicholas's final moment.
Right.
It makes you wonder, how does anyone recover
Yeah.
from that kind of trauma? It's not just grief.
Yeah.
It's like a piece of their own being has been ripped away.
And that brings us to the heart of the story.
Okay.
The podcast jumps ahead 15 years,
15 years.
and we see the protagonist
Yep.
is still grappling with the aftermath
Okay.
of Nicholas's death.
Wow.
It's not just a memory.
Uh-huh.
They carry this constant, visceral reminder of his pain,
Right.
his anger, his unfinished goodbyes.
Gosh.
It's like he's still with them, but in this warped, haunting way.
It's so much more than just missing someone.
Right.
It's like they're haunted by Nicholas's essence, his energy, everything that made him who he was.
Uh-huh.
And the fact that they try to cope through conventional means,
Right.
therapy medication,
Uh-huh.
really underscores
Yeah.
how unique and complex this kind of loss is.
And this is where the concept of a psychological burden really comes into play. It's not just sadness.
Right.
It's this constant weight, this intrusive presence
Wow.
that prevents the protagonist from moving on.
Yeah.
Standard grief therapy doesn't really account for a situation where the deceased person is,
Yeah.
in a sense,
Uh-huh.
still there,
Right.
woven into the fabric of their being.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
It completely redefines the idea of grief.
Yeah.
And what it means to truly let go of someone.
Right.
And it all builds up to this incredibly intense moment
Okay.
where the protagonist finds themselves on the edge of their apartment building.
Oh my gosh.
15 stories high.
15 stories.
Contemplating ending it all.
Wow.
Talk about a desperate situation.
What's even more chilling is that it's not just their own despair driving them to this point.
Oh.
They can still hear Nicholas's voice.
Oh.
But instead of comfort, it's urging them to jump.
Oh, wow.
It highlights how this profound connection, this bond that was supposed to be life-affirming, has become twisted and distorted by trauma.
Okay, so now we're in this really dark and unsettling place.
Yeah.
The connection that was once a source of love and belonging has become the source of torment.
Wow.
It makes you question, can you truly be free?
Yeah.
From a bond that runs so deep, even after death?
Right.
And if so, what would it take to break free?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Can you escape a bond that's woven into your very essence?
Right.
It challenges our whole understanding of what it means to be connected to another person.
Right. It's like we always talk about finding the one.
Yeah.
But what happens when that connection becomes more of a curse than a blessing?
Right.
It really makes you rethink the whole soulmate ideal.
And the last thread doesn't shy away from exploring those darker aspects.
Yeah.
The way the protagonist grapples with Nicholas's death, the lingering trauma, the feeling of being haunted.
Right.
It all speaks to the profound and often overlooked psychological impact of such a profound loss.
Totally. And I think it's important to note that the protagonist's struggles aren't just about missing Nicholas.
Right.
They're literally carrying a part of him with them.
Yeah.
His pain, his emotions, even years after his passing.
Right.
It's like a part of him is trapped inside them, unable to move on.
Exactly. And that raises some really interesting questions.
Yeah.
About the nature of grief and trauma. How do you mourn someone who's still, in a sense, present in your life?
Right.
How do you even begin to heal when you're constantly reminded of their absence through this shared connection?
You know, it's almost like the traditional stages of grief.
Don't apply here.
Yeah.
It's not a linear process of moving on.
Right.
It's this constant push and pull between wanting to hold on to the connection and needing to break free for your own sanity.
Absolutely. The last thread really challenges us to rethink how we define letting go in the context of a bond that transcends the physical realm.
Okay.
Is it about severing the connection completely or finding a way to coexist with it?
Right.
Can you integrate that loss into your life without letting it consume you?
It's a delicate balancing act, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the podcast does a great job of illustrating the struggle to find that equilibrium. We see the protagonist trying different coping mechanisms. Seeking professional help, trying to distract themselves.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it comes down to an internal battle.
And that's what makes the story so powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just about the supernatural element of soulmates.
Right.
It's about the very human capacity for resilience.
For finding the strength to confront your demons and choose a path forward.
Yeah.
Even when it feels impossible.
You know, thinking about it from the listener's perspective, you mentioned in your notes that you were really drawn to the idea of fate versus free will. And this story really throws that into question, wouldn't you say?
It does.
If you're bound to someone else in this way, can you truly make your own choices?
It's a fascinating dilemma.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have this predetermined connection.
Right.
This sense that your life is intertwined with another person's. But on the other hand, you have the protagonist actively fighting against that bond. Trying to reclaim their own agency.
Exactly.
It really highlights the tension between destiny and self-determination.
And the last thread doesn't offer any easy answers. It leaves you wrestling with these questions, which I think is part of its brilliance. It's not a story that wraps everything up neatly in a bow. It's a story that stays with you long after you've finished listening.
Absolutely.
Oh.
It makes you question your own beliefs about love, fate, and the power of human connection. And for me, one of the most compelling aspects is how it explores the duality of these profound bonds. They can be a source of incredible joy and strength, but also immense pain and suffering. It's a reminder that even the deepest connections require careful navigation.
So true. It's not always sunshine and roses. Sometimes letting go, even when it feels like tearing yourself apart, is the bravest and most loving act you can do for yourself.
I think that's a message that resonates deeply, especially for anyone who's ever been in a difficult or toxic relationship.
Right.
It's a reminder that we're not defined by our connections, and that we have the power to choose our own happiness, even if it means walking away from something that once felt essential to who we are.
And, going back to the protagonist's journey, there's this incredible moment of defiance where they finally decide to break free from Nicholas's hold.
They do.
It's a conscious choice, a deliberate act of reclaiming their own life.
It's such a powerful scene. They whisper, "It's time to let go." And as they do, you can almost hear the thread that binds them to Nicholas start to unravel.
Wow.
His voice fades, becoming more distant, like a memory slowly slipping away.
The imagery is so vivid.
Yeah.
It really captures the struggle and the bittersweet relief of breaking free from such a profound connection. It's not a clean break.
Right.
It's a gradual untangling of emotions, memories, and shared experiences.
It's like they're finally reclaiming their own narrative.
Yeah.
After years of being entangled with Nicholas's story.
And that's what makes the last thread so thought-provoking.
Right.
It challenges the notion that soulmates are meant to be together forever, no matter the cost. It suggests that sometimes letting go, even when it's agonizing, can be the greatest act of self-preservation.
And it raises a really important question for us as listeners.
Which is?
Well, is letting go always the right answer? Or are there situations where fighting for that connection, even when it's fraught with challenges, is worth the potential pain?
That's a tough one. And I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the duality of these profound bonds.
Right.
They can be both life-giving and life-shattering, depending on the circumstances.
Exactly.
There's no easy answer, no one-size-fits-all approach.
And that's why the last thread is such a powerful piece of storytelling.
Yeah.
It doesn't offer simple solutions or pat answers.
Right.
It leaves you grappling with these complex questions about love loss and the very nature of human connection.
And it's like it holds a mirror up to our own beliefs about soulmates and forces us to confront the messiness and the potential heartbreak that can come with such intense bonds.
And it reminds us that there's no right or wrong way to navigate these relationships. It's about finding what works for you.
Yeah.
Even if it means making tough choices that challenge societal norms or expectations.
Thinking back to your initial question for this deep dive, you were curious about how this fictional story could offer insights into real-world relationships.
Right.
And for me, one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of self-awareness. Recognizing your own needs, your own boundaries, and being willing to prioritize those, even within a soulmate connection.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that you're not responsible for your soulmate's happiness or well-being.
Right.
At the expense of your own.
Okay.
You have the right to set boundaries to protect your own emotional and mental health, even if it means distancing yourself from someone you deeply care about.
And it's not selfish to prioritize your own well-being.
Right.
In fact, it's essential for any healthier relationship, whether it's with a soulmate, a family member, or a friend.
The last thread really drives that point home.
Yeah.
The protagonist's journey, their struggle to break free from Nicholas's hold, is ultimately a story about self-discovery and empowerment.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you have the right to choose your own path, even if it means deviating from what's expected or considered normal.
So powerful.
Yeah.
This fictional story really gives us a lot to chew on when it comes to our own relationships. It reminds us that profound connections aren't always easy or straightforward.
Right.
They require work communication.
Yeah.
And a willingness to prioritize both our own needs and the needs of the other person.
And sometimes, as difficult as it may be, letting go can be the most loving act of all.
Wow.
It can be a way of honoring both yourself and the other person.
Okay.
Allowing both of you to grow and evolve in ways that might not be possible within the confines of that particular connection.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
And it's left me with a lot to ponder. Before we wrap things up, I want to pose a question directly to you, our listener. If you could choose between the blissful ignorance of not knowing about your soulmate or the intense, potentially tumultuous experience of being connected to them, which would you choose?
That's a question that could keep you up at night.
I know, right?
Would you risk the potential heartache for the chance at that kind of profound connection?
Right.
Or would you prefer to navigate life without that added layer of complexity.
It's a decision that ultimately comes down to your own personal values and beliefs about love, fate, and free will.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer, but it's definitely something worth reflecting on.
This deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to how multifaceted and intricate the whole idea of soulmates can be. It's not just about finding the one,
right,
but navigating the intricate dance of that connection, even when it throws unexpected challenges your way.
And I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
The last thread has given us a glimpse into the shadows and the light of profound connections, reminding us that even in the face of loss and heartbreak, there's always the potential for healing growth and self-discovery.
Remember, you have the power to choose your own path, to create your own narrative, and to build relationships that nourish and support you, even if they don't fit the traditional mold.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of soulmates.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the downright terrifying.
It was a wild ride.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.